Hello, everyone. It is the 220-1002 A+ Study Group pre-show. We're going to be starting up in about 10 minutes with our 220-1002 study group. I'm just getting things together here. So if you're watching this in the replay, you can jump ahead about 10 minutes, or you can just hang out with us in the chat room, thus getting things together, doing double checks. Recordings are going, streaming is going, recordings are going down here. There's my Cylons. Left the door open today, or the cover open, so I could see what was going on out there. Bad weather in the area, so hopefully this will go well. We're going to find out if it does or not. That's in a good place. This is right. I think we're in pretty good shape. Hey, chat room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for settling in with us. How is the weather? Let's see if we can get a map of the weather. Let's see, maps. That's what I'd like. They are telling us that we should look out for tornadoes later today. So let's see if I can bring this up on the screen. All the great ads that are there. There we go. So I am in Tallahassee at the moment, and all of this is coming to me. Wonder if we can play it. Coming my way. So this will be fun, won't it? This will be great. We'll find out exactly how things turn out today. So there's always a mystery with the study group. That's our mystery for today. Hello, Bristol, UK, which is different than Bristol, Florida. I think we figured that out, didn't we? Kenya is here. We've got Columbus, Ohio, right there near Dublin. The suburb of Dublin. KC Mo is here. Columbia, South Carolina, checking in. And South Carolina again, welcome. You don't have a way to call. Yes, you can always put questions into the chat room in the second hour. Sometimes not quite easy for me to see it, but if you'd like to offline when we are not having a study group, you can always send me an email as well. Barking UK. Again, Frostburg Steak, welcome. Dallas, Texas, welcome. Detroit, St. Lucia, how nice. El Paso, Colorado Springs, welcome. See, there's lots of Bristols. I have kinfolk in Bristol, Florida. Well, just across the river. Just across the Chattahoochee. Or is that the Apalachicola? Now I'm getting confused. But in Bluntstown, see, there's all kinds of those little tiny cities you run into. There's Bedford, England, New York, Seattle's here. Welcome, Waterbury, Connecticut. Waterbury. I didn't even say it right. I'm trying. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. There's Atlanta, welcome. Oh, so we've already got what you had. I'm looking forward to it. Chicago's here. DC is here. Sholo is here. Arizona. There's Queens checking in. There's Ontario. Always like it when Canada checks in. Hello, Gainesville, just down the street. Appreciate you being here. Dallas, Woodbridge, Erie, PA is here. So we're all over today. We're going to do all 220-1002 today. We've got all new questions. I've got plenty. I think we're ready to go. Now, if the network stays up, the power stays on, we'll be all right. So that's how that's going to work. DeLonga is here. Tampa is here. There's I think a lot of you sent in the super secret code for Tuesday. I still have to go through those. I'm going to try to get through all those before the end of the week. So sometime in this first hour, I will give you the special code word that you can use for CEU emails. We'll figure it out. Hello, Phoenix. Welcome. Sam got A+ certified. Thanks to me. Well, thanks to you. You're the one who had to take the test. You're the one who did the hard part. We're going to start in about 5.5 minutes. We'll get started. You won't see this the whole time. There's different things you'll see. You'll get a different view. You'll get this view later on. Except there's two of me there. You won't get that view. You'll get that view. What other? We're looking good here. We're looking good there. So all is good in the neighborhood. We are all set to go. I think the next part I need to work on in here is just doing a little bit of recabling. It's not too bad. If you were to go behind the behind the desk. You can kind of see down here, there's a little bit of cabling needs to be cleaned up just a bit. It's not horrible. That's my next step. There's my ding that says the study group must be starting in 5 minutes. Let's check the tweeter, make sure it shows up. We should also have messages on the YouTube, and all the emails should go out. They all go out about 5 minutes before. So we'll have more folks joining us in the chat room. Remember, we're going to pop out a browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA to answer questions. That's the question that's in front of me right there. I know I put a Twitter thing. It'll catch up in a moment. Am I following myself on Twitter? There's the first thing I should check on. I think I am. I think that is the account I'm looking at, so I'm okay. There's Twitter. I don't send out a notice on Instagram. I don't really send out a notice on YouTube because YouTube does that automatically if you subscribe to the channel. So we'll just wait for that to come through. I will take it on faith that that is going to work okay. We'll see how that goes. There is, this is our second study group of the week. This is our 221,002. Tuesday, we did the 221,001. So we get them all in 2 weeks, or two in a single week. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm doing another 2 in a week, which is not normal. Normally, the next week is Network Plus. The week after that, Security Plus. But instead, I'm skipping a week and doing 2 on the following week. So that's what is up with that. I think what I need to work on also here, I've got a couple cables I need to replace. I want to replace my audio cable because I'm using an adapter to go into the in-ear monitors. And I've got a video cable that's flaky. I use coax for all of the video. It's SDI. And it's, so there's coax everywhere. There's coax going up the wall, in the back, to the streaming device, which is what you see right here. So there's one piece of coax I know it's not right. Maybe I've just tightened it up. I need to work on that. I keep saying that with every study group. I need to tighten that cable up. So we'll see. When does Security Plus end? Is there a new test coming? There's always a new test coming. The question is, when is that going to be? CompTIA has already said that will be later this year. I expect in the October timeframe you will see a new Security Plus released, but the current exam probably won't go away until March of next year. So you have over a year until the current Security Plus exam goes away. So if you are studying now, continue to study, get your certification, you're going to be good. Any resources I would recommend in terms of practice questions? There is. For those of you looking over my shoulder, we'll go to my website. Under the A+ training option, under A+ study recommendations, you will see a list of those. Let's see if I can, whoops, get the right view here. There they are, the A+ study recommendations. Videos, books, lots of Q&A, plenty hands-on. So those are the 3 areas I recommend. Right on my websites under the A+ training, under A+ study recommendations, or from the main page of the website, it is under the A+ option under A+ study recommendations right there. You will be able to find it just fine. I know I keep saying that every study group got to work on that cable. Is that cable set? Have I fixed the cable yet? Does the cable work? No. It doesn't give me a problem until I go live. That's the problem. If I was just sitting here and I could see it flashing up here with its loose connection, of course I would fix it right then. But it doesn't do that. No. It waits until we're live, and then it does that for those things. So that's the list of my recommendations. Do you do CCNA routing and switching next, or wait for the new CCNA? There is no new CCNA. It's out. I mean, I know it officially comes out on the 29th of this month, but all the books and everything are out. All the exam objectives are out. So if you're studying CCNA, routing and switching, it is the new one already, effectively. So you're on the new version. Don't get any of the old books or anything else. You would use the new stuff for all of those. Well, it's about time, isn't it? We got about 10 seconds till we get started. We should probably, I need to prep things on this side, make sure that looks good. It does. Make sure these are ready to go. They are. I think We're ready to get started, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2020 A+ 220-1002 study group from your friends here at Messer Studios. My name is James Messer. I will be your host for this next hour plus of questions and answers on the A+ exam. In the first hour, I will give you questions that you will answer online. I'll tell you in a moment how you're able to make that happen. And I will also, in the second hour, open up the chat room, open up the phone lines, and you will be able to ask me questions. It doesn't have to be questions about the A+. It can really be questions about anything. I don't know that I would answer questions about anything, but I answer most questions that come in. The questions that I'm going to give you in this first hour, you can answer live and online by popping open a new browser window and visiting professormesser.com/QA. That is your link. Alternatively, you can download an app from your favorite app store. The app you're looking for is the Socrative Student app. The Socrative Student app, that is the one that you can use on your mobile device. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right. It might trip you up a little bit on that spelling, because if you don't spell it right, you'll end up in a room with nothing. There's no questions. There's nobody else. It's like you walked into the wrong classroom. Make sure you walk into the right classroom by spelling that room name correctly, and you'll be in fine shape. The first example of this, if you've done all of that right, there will be a question waiting for you. This is a question we did last month. So hopefully if you weren't here last month, it's new to you. If you were here last month, let's see if you remember what the question is, which is, what type of variable is represented by x equals 1120? Is that an environment variable, a floating point variable, an integer, a binary, or a string variable? Those are your 5 options. Lock in your answers. Please don't answer in the chat room. You want to lock in your answers by popping open that browser window and visiting professormesser.com/QA. We're going to talk about the answer of that in just a moment. Stand by. In the meantime, let's talk about a few other things that I have here. For instance, the fact that we're able to do these study groups thanks to your ongoing support. Of course, every single one of my videos is available for you to watch on my website. Every minute of every video, we don't put anything behind a paywall. There's nothing you have to register for. You can just simply go out to YouTube and watch them by going to professormesser.com/YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel and click the bell if you would like some notifications. You also get a daily pop quiz question on the Twitter. That might be something you want to do. That's useful to have there. We also got new Instagram questions. Those same questions are put onto Instagram. And what's nice about that, we use the Instagram functionality for being able to look at a question, see what the question is and the answers, and it's got the carousel built in so you can swipe to the left and see what the answer happens to be. So another thing that you can do by going to professormesser.com/Instagram. We've got also another way that you can help support the site by visiting professormesser.com/Amazon. If you purchase your items from Amazon, you're already paying good low prices there. One thing that you can do is use that link. You pay exactly the same price, but Amazon gives us a commission for doing that. So it helps us support the site financially, and you didn't even have to put any money out of your pocket. All you had to do was visit professormesser.com/Amazon to make that happen. Today, we're going to talk all about the 220-1002. Of course, both the 1001 and 1002 exams were released about a year ago, January 15th of 2019. So they've been around about a year. I think we've gotten a feel for them now. The 1002 exam is on a scale from 100 to 900. You have to make a 700. So that doesn't make any sense, does it? It's a little odd, but I think that's intentional. They don't tell you how much each question is worth. Just do your best, and I think you'll be okay. If you're one of the folks that you were studying that 900 series exam, you may find there's a lot of changes in the 1000 series. For the 1002, 20% of the exam is brand new topics. So it's not something you want to really mess around with. If you want to see those differences or get a link to the objectives themselves, simply visit professormesser.com/objectives. And there's a link there that will take you right over to CompTIA. Today, we're going to talk about the 1002 exam. So all the questions today will come from operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. As I mentioned, we're able to do these study groups thanks to your support. Some of you like to have an offline version of these courses. There's one available on my site at professormesser.com/download A+. And for a small fee, you can have the videos, the audio, my course notes. It comes bundled with everything. You can find that professormesser.com/download A+. I've also got on my website a replay of this study group. Of course, the video is available immediately afterwards. It takes a minute or two for the video to get processed, and then it's available automatically on YouTube. If you would like an audio-only version of this or a podcast version that can be downloaded automatically to your podcast app, simply visit professormesser.com/podcast. I've also got a YouTube description of everything we do today by timestamp. Now, this doesn't happen as we're doing it. My marketing manager, Lori, goes back through all of this, listens to the study group, and puts timestamps in. Hi, Lori. Thanks for watching us do all of this, and thanks for putting those timestamps in. People in the chat room are constantly saying they use these timestamps to jump to exactly what they're looking for on the replay. It might help you as well as you look at some of the previous study groups and go back of those as well. Let's go back to the question that we asked, which was what type of variable is represented by x equals 1120. X equals 1120, 1120. Our possible answers were environment, floating point, integer, binary, or string. And if you locked in your answer, 72% of you said that is an integer variable. We have 11% said it was a string variable, 6% said binary, 6% said floating point, so a tie for third, and in fourth place, environment variable. Well, one of the things you'll notice when you get into doing scripting, and scripting is a part of the 220-1002, is there's a number of different variables you'll run into. If it's a variable with characters in it, letters, like the letters Professor Messer, that's a string variable. The variable we were looking at, though, was a variable that was just whole numbers, not decimals or fractions of numbers. Those whole numbers are called integer variables. If it was a number that had a decimal point in it or a fraction, then that would be a floating point variable. So those are three of the main kind of variables. There's other variables you need to know. In fact, all those variables in this list are from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with these. That is going to help you when you get into working with those exam objectives. Another thing that you will find as you step through the exam objectives and through the questions today, you may see some of these that pop up you aren't recognizing. So if you're wondering, what is a binary variable? What is a string variable? What is integer? What is floating point? Make a note of those. Some of these are going to be on your exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those before you get into the details of your studies. Whenever we do these study groups, I like to give you brand new questions every month, so we're going to get into the brand new questions right now. But before we do another multiple choice question, I like to have the first new question of the study group be what CompTIA calls a performance-based question. These are questions that are not multiple choice. You're going to get a handful of these performance-based questions when you start your exam. In fact, you may be looking forward to seeing a bunch of multiple choice questions like these and suddenly realize these first questions are not multiple choice. Is the entire exam like this? Fortunately not. You will see that there's only a handful of performance-based questions at the beginning. So I like to give you a performance-based question as well. The performance-based questions are questions that might be fill in the blank. They might be matching questions. It may be drag and drop. There might be you putting things in a particular order from highest to lowest, fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what CompTIA might ask on these performance-based questions, but they all come from the exam objectives. So you're not going to get information that you weren't expecting. The question I have for you is a performance-based question today that is a matching question. So let's start with this matching question that asks, match the Linux utility to the description. And I have 4 Linux utilities here, and I have 6 descriptions. So it's a 1-to-1. There's going to be some left over at the end. The 4 Linux utilities are grep, dd, chown, and ps. Those are your 4 Linux utilities: grep, dd, chown, and ps. And then we have 6 different descriptions. So it's a 1-to-1 match, so 2 are not going to be used. Let's step through each one of these descriptions for the folks that are listening in on the podcast. The first is change the access of a file to read only. The second description is modify the owner of a file to be professor. The third is run a system utility using elevated rights. The fourth is to search through files to find the word error. The fifth is identify applications using excessive CPU and memory. And the last one is to create a backup image for a partition. Now, if you think you know these, plug them into our online system by going to professormesser.com/QA. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Please don't put any answers in the chat room. For those of you listening on the podcast, again, I'm going to go through these just so you can maybe figure it out. The 4 Linux utilities are grep, dd, chown, and ps. And the 6 different descriptions are change the access of a file to read only. Another is modify the owner of a file to be professor. Another is run a system utility using elevated rights. The fourth one is search through files to find the word error. The fifth is identify applications using excessive CPU and memory. And the last is create a backup image for a partition. Now, what I have online is a fill in the blank. I can see a number of you are putting these in. If you think they match up perfectly, then you would simply put online 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. And I guess E and F would be left out. So there's 2 that are to be left over after you do all of this. Hopefully that will help you as you're stepping through these and figuring out. I'm looking at the answers coming in now. I think we're in pretty good shape. A number of you are spot on with what these answers might be. Lock them in. Remember what you locked in, because you can't see them once you lock it in. Not sure why that is, but there you go. Lock those in and you'll be able to see and get a feel for that as well. Hopefully you know these Linux utilities. I was noticing there were some chats, some conversations in my website or an online chat I was looking at where people were wondering, is there Linux on the exam? Oh, yes. Plenty of Linux on the exam, and it starts here with these Linux utilities to be able to step through. A lot of you are slowly putting in your answers. I'm noticing whenever I look at the answers, I can see how quickly people are submitting their answers. You won't be able to Google this because this is the first time anyone's seen it. Google does not have it. It has not been indexed in the Google machine. So no Googling anyway. Do not do that. And I think what we'll do next time is you'll have to submit everything using Vim or VI. Well, we'll do that next time. We won't, like you said. No, don't ask me to do any of those special distributions and changes and updates and searches and regular expression matches. It's difficult. I have to go to a website. There's lots of great websites you can go to for your regex and figure out the regular expressions and put them in and test them. And I have to do that. I do have a very nice regular expression match I use when I'm doing your CEU emails. There's an automated process that parses out the email, grabs all the information, and puts it in there for me. So it only took me months to get that working. So that gives you a feel for just how qualified I am on the development side. And that's exactly why I am not doing development videos. Let's see what the answers are on this one. We'll match the Linux utility to the description. We'll start with grep. Though grep, if we go through our entire list, you should have matched grep to option D, search through the files to find the word error. Grep is it's a matching utility, so you can go through each of these text files or all of the files on your computer and look for a particular string or a particular set of information. For instance, if you were looking through a log file to find the word error, grep would show you all of the lines in that log file where the word error existed. The second on our list is DD. The name DD doesn't sound like what it is. This is a utility that's able to take information from one place and put it in another and even do some conversions of that data. We often use it in Linux to simply grab an entire partition or an entire drive and copy that drive out to a file that may be somewhere else. So F is the answer there. Create a backup image for a partition. DD is often used to do imaging in Linux. So if somebody says, I need to create an image of a particular Linux directory, a particular partition, a particular drive itself, DD may be a good utility for you to use. Third on our list was chown. Kind of gives it away in the name. Chown matches to B, modify the owner. It changes the owner of a file to be professor. So if I had to go through my files on my computer and change the ownership of files, which occasionally I have to do on my local machine, I would use chown to be able to do that. And the last one on our list is PS. PS, which does not stand for PostScript. It stands for processes. If you want to be able to view the processes running on your computer, then you would choose E, identify applications using excessive CPU and memory by using PS. And it's not PlayStation, not in this case. Anyway, it's not we should have a utility called PS4 and PS5. That'd be great. I'd use my Linux machine all the time to be able to do that. Yes, the example where I was modifying the owner of a file to be professor is an example where I was modifying the owner of a file. That's what that is. And then the owner of the file would be the username professor, which interestingly enough is the username I have on my computer. So that's why that example is there, ripped from the headlines. An actual example that I used this week to set the ownership of a directory so that I could transfer some database files and do backups every night. So there you go. That's where that came from. The two answers you did not choose, the two descriptions, were C, run a system utility using elevated rights. Anybody care to guess what that utility is? Bonus question, and you can answer in the chat room for this one. What system utility what would allow you to run a system utility using elevated rights on your computer? And it's sudo, yes, sudo. In fact, we'll put that in right there. There it is. And the last one on our list, which was change the access of a file to read only. How about that one? Any of you happen to know what that one happens to be? Changing the access of a file to read only. Well, this is one where if chown is the one that changes the ownership, then if you wanted to change the mode of a file, that's what we call it in Linux, then it would be chmod, which is really chmod, but we call it chmod. That is the one that will allow you to do that. So there we got at least two chances to actually put an answer into the chat room. No more answers in the chat room from this point on. I am putting the nicks on those. No more answers. We're going to do all of this online. We'll be able to figure it out, though, as we go through this. So hopefully, as we go through these answers and we see this in the performance-based questions, as you can tell, all of this content came directly from the exam objectives. So don't be thrown that performance-based questions are going to be this very complex set of questions, that there's going to be a Linux front end and you're going to have to type things in, although they could, I guess, do that. They don't tend to. Many of the performance-based questions tend to be questions like this, like matching questions and putting things in a particular order. So some of these should be gimmies for you. They're almost taking multiple choice questions and kind of cramming them all into one big question, if you want to think of it that way, to be able to make that happen. So hopefully that is something that you can work through to make that happen as well. Those can help you. So these are only 6 of the Linux utilities, but I think there's more like 18 utilities you have to know to be able to know all of the Linux utilities. So make sure that you're familiar with those. These, by the way, came directly from my videos in the 221002 series, section 1.9, basic Linux commands. All the Linux commands you need to know are in that video. Let's do some multiple choice questions. Let's go back to multiple choice. Wouldn't that be nice to have some of these? And I have one for you. This next question asks, a system administrator needs to associate a remote Windows share with a drive letter. Which of the following commands would provide this functionality? Boy, I'm hitting you with commands right off, aren't I? Don't worry, the whole test is not commands like this. A system administrator needs to associate a remote Windows share with a drive letter. Which of the following commands would provide this functionality? Would it be share? Would it be net? Would it be diskpart? Would it be netstat? Or would it be robocopy? Put in your answer. The way you would put in your answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. And you will be able to lock in your answer. Again, please no answers in the chat room, and please no hints in the chat room. One of the questions about that previous question, we had a couple of questions about that previous question. One is that, is there a partial credit? That matching question, you could have got some right and some wrong. CompTIA has told us in their frequently asked questions file on their website, maybe. That's possible that some of the questions might provide partial credit. So they really have not come out and said they give partial credit or not. They said they might, and some answers might. I think what that really means is that if the question is one, sort of like the last one we looked at, the question is one where there is a chance to give partial credit, it is my hope that CompTIA does that. But they don't share what they do. They don't share their grading mechanisms, their grading methodologies. So don't worry about what CompTIA does or what CompTIA doesn't do. Just do the best you can, and maybe they'll give you partial credit if it's something that makes sense for what they're doing. One of the things we just did was sudo was one of those answers on our previous question. That is one that will run a utility as an elevated, in this case, as a different user, or in many cases as the root user, but you can run a utility as someone else using sudo, and it starts that utility off as that. Other people were saying, what about SU? In fact, using SU with the dash, what is all that about? Well, SU will allow you to change your shell to be that user, have that user functionality in the shell itself. So you're not just running one utility, you're actually in a shell as that user. And the SU dash means that we're going to start that shell without running the normal startup shell scripts for that particular user. So if you SU and with no options, you SU into root, you're now the administrator of that system. And anything that you do from that point on in that shell is run as that particular user. So that's the difference, is just running one utility with sudo or being that user in a shell with SU. Those are the two differences. Let's go back to this question, though, because a lot of you are locking in your answers to this one. No, we haven't. And by the way, in the chat room, we're just getting started, so I have not given out the super secret code word for the CEUs yet. So listen in somewhere in there to be able to make that happen. That should help with some of the things that you're doing as well. So this question asked, a system administrator needs to associate a remote Windows share with a drive letter. Which of the following commands would provide this functionality? And our possible options were share, net, diskpart, netstat, and robocopy. Those are your 5 options. Let's see how you answered on this one. Oh, we're a little torn. I would say a tie for first, maybe a tie for, definitely a tie for first. So 32% of you said net is the command that would provide that functionality. 29% of you said share. So almost a tie for first place. 21% said diskpart. 10% said netstat, and 7% said robocopy. So if we were going to go through both of these and figure out between share and net, which command would allow me to associate a remote Windows share with a drive letter? And the way that you would associate that, the way that you would turn a particular drive letter on your computer to reference that share name is through the net command, specifically the net use command. There are a lot of different net commands. You can see them all listed out here. If you just type in net, it gives you a list of all of these: net use, net view, net config, net computer, net statistics, a lot of different net commands. But if you're trying to map a drive, you would use the net use command. For example, to map a network drive to a drive letter, you would use net, the use option. You would specify the drive letter you would like this particular share to use on your local computer. So you don't currently have an H drive, let's make an H drive. And every time I go to that H drive, I would like it to use a share that happens to be in / server name / share name. And that would now turn my H drive into a connection to that share. So if you have utilities or programs that reference by drive letter, now you can simply choose the H drive as the drive letter, and that will automatically reference that particular share on another machine. So that becomes handy to have that functionality and have that usefulness to have it there. There is, if we look at our possible answers, net is the right answer. If you answered B, 35% of you, which was the highest number here, did get that one right. It is net. The share command, is there a share command? There might actually be one in PowerShell that I'm thinking about it, but I don't know at the DOS prompt there actually is a share command. I might have made that one up to be able to see just how many people would choose it. I know diskpart, of course, would show you information, allow you to change information about the partitions on your disk. Obviously, that is not what we were trying to do. So that would not be the right answer. NetStat rather, is not one that's going to help us very much. NetStat is one that can give us information about network statistics. And robocopy, just as the name implies, is a robust copy command. That is not what we were trying to do either. We were trying to share that particular drive with all of those. And that would be the net command to do that. If you answered bnet, 35% of you got that one absolutely right. Is there a Linux way to do this? There is a number of ways to do this in Linux. The mount command is probably the most common way to do this in Linux. The mount command allows you to share or specify a particular folder or a particular directory in Linux, and you can mount NFS drives, you can mount SMB drives in most of the Windows devices. You can mount other types of drives as long as your Linux distribution understands the formatting used for those. It's an easy way to do it. You don't need to run Samba and all that other stuff. You simply mount it and use that SMB drive. Makes it much easier to be able to make that happen. I guess Samba's really, some of those demons are running behind the scenes. So you have to make sure, by the way, your Linux distribution does that to make that happen. Thank you for asking that question. And yes, this is live. So if you ask a question in the chat room, I do get to see them. They're all in front of me. I get to get a feel for this. So they're right there. I get to see everybody who's sending all of those in. So you're more than happy to send in any questions you would like in there. And hopefully we're able to flip back to those. So on this one, again, if you answered bnet, the net use command is the command we were looking for. 36% of you got that one right. Let's do another multiple choice. How about one that has nothing to do with commands? I promise. No more command questions. I won't say no more, but no more this time. No more for this next question. There will not be a command question. This question asks, which of the following would be most associated with TKIP? Which of the following would be most associated with TKIP? And I have 5 options for you. Those 5 options are WPA2, Radius, WPA, CCMP, and WEP. Your 5 options there. So which of the following would be most associated with TKIP? Would it be WPA2, Radius, WPA, CCMP, or WEP? 5 different options for you to lock that in. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We want to figure out what would be most associated with TKIP. See if you can lock your answer in and have that there. There's a lot of different options there. Each one of those, by the way, let me bring those options up again so we can step through them real quick. Each one of those directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you don't recognize any of them and you're wondering what is the right answer, where do I go with this, what do we think it is, I don't recognize that one, I don't think I know what that's referring to, then please absolutely write it down. If you don't know what WPA2 or Radius or WPA or CCMP or WEP is, go through the list, write those down, and make sure you look those up. We'll figure out the details on all of these things. I think that's one that you can break through and have a look at that. Another question in the chat room, do I have any plans on making any content for Linux Plus? You know, Linux Plus is on my list, but I don't have any immediate plans to make any content for Linux Plus. I did try to start a Linux Plus course in the past, and to be fair, it was not very well received. Well, it's sort of well received. Linux I find to be very polarizing for some reason. Linux tends to be, a lot of people really like it. A lot of people like to tell you how much they don't like it. And I'm not sure why that is with Linux, but there's a Linux thing. Maybe we've gotten better since then. Maybe things are better. How about the new CCNA? I'd love to do some CCNA content. So that's one of those where it's more about time than anything else. When do we do these live streams? You can go to professormesser.com/QA, not QA, professormesser.com/calendar, or choose the calendar link right on the website, and you can see when the next live events are going to be. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the following would be most associated with TKIP? Which would be most associated with TKIP? Let's see how we did. Again, we're a little bit torn on this one. 36% of you said WPA. 31% of you said WPA2. 21% of you said WEP. 9% said Radius. 3% said CCMP. TKIP is what we were talking about. TKIP, let's talk a little bit about how we got to where we are with the technologies. Obviously, we don't run WEP anymore. WEP, the wired equivalent privacy, is not used because we found cryptographic vulnerabilities that make it painfully easy to break into any WEP network. But we had to come up with a way that we could replace it quickly without having to replace all of these access points that we had put out. And as you're probably aware, cryptography is not a simple thing to do. It requires CPU cycles, it requires memory, it requires time. And all of these things are what you do not have in an access point on a live network. But we came up with a way to do this using WPA. This was effectively the interim replacement for WEP, which was great. And the great part about it is it ran on the hardware that we already had. So that was great, fantastic to have that there. One of the functionalities of WPA was that it had a couple of protocols that allowed us to provide more security. And those protocols were RC4, which allowed us to do the encryption part with WPA. And the part that provided integrity was TKIP, the Temporal Key Integrity Protocol. It had a bigger initialization vector. These are special characters, or really a random set of characters that we add into the mix to help randomize the final numbers. And it encrypted the hash. Every packet got a unique 128-bit encryption key. So much stronger than what we were running with the WEP, which is fantastic to have that there. Now, when we moved from WPA to WPA2, we used a completely different encryption mechanism and a completely different integrity protocol. We instead were using AES with CCNP. So CCNP kind of incorporated the encryption and the integrity and some other nice capabilities inside of it, but RC4 and TKIP was no longer used at that point. Really, WPA wasn't around for very long, only if you were running sort of older access points that could not run the increased hardware requirements that WPA2 really needed. So anytime you see RC4 with TKIP, you should immediately start thinking WPA, that interim protocol. So if you answered WPA, answer C, 37% of you got that absolutely right. As I mentioned, WPA2 is running CCNP, which uses AES for the encryption part. We've got 20% of you chose WEP. WEP is not running TKIP in its configuration. We've got 9% said radius, 3% said CCNP. Obviously our answer, and the best answer here, the only answer that would be most associated with TKIP, is WPA, answer C. That's where we got all of that from. Now, as you can imagine, we've already gone through Windows commands and Linux commands. We haven't even gotten to the security part of the 1002 exam. I guess we did a little bit of wireless there with wireless security in that last question. There's hardware troubleshooting. There's software troubleshooting. There's so much you need to know for your A+ exam. What I've done is take all of the good bits, all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts that I've created for my videos, and I put them into one set of course notes. This should speed up your note-taking dramatically if you are studying for this exam, because you will be able to run through and get all of your notes in one place. Here's an example of the 221,002 course notes. It's a PDF file that I've got up, over 50 pages of this. And if we go, in fact, to the security section, let's go to wireless security. We'll go right to the wireless security page that talks about wireless security, and it talks about the Temporal Key Integrity Protocol. There's TKIP right there, where it tells you more about TKIP and tells you why we're not using TKIP any longer. There's other pages in here you can see that have the graphics and the charts and the other information that I've created for these particular courses. Everything is in there. So if you're looking for a way to quickly have access, it's a PDF file. You can put it on all of your devices. So wherever you go, you will have access to all of this information. That's a great way to do it. There's also a physical version, so you can pay a little bit more because we have to print this out and ship it to you. But it's a printed version in full color with great high quality pages. It's a nice paperback bound book. It's exactly the same information, where there's nothing extra in the paper version. But to be quite fair, Mrs. Professor Messer likes a paper version of a book. So she said, make a paper version. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I did. So a lot of you also like it too. She's not the only one. And I get it. I can see why having a book with you would be very nice. And if you get the physical version of the course notes, I also give you the digital version for free. So you get a little bonus. You get both of those in one. If you want to know how to get your hands on those, go to professormesser.com/1000notes. Every single dollar of this goes back to keeping this craziness going. So it's a great way to support the site. It's a great way to support what we're doing here. It makes Mrs. Professor Messer very happy, and that makes me very happy, and I appreciate it. Thank you for your ongoing support with that. professormesser.com/1000notes, 1000 notes. Let's do another question from our question pool. A brand new question asks, which of the following would be the best way to manage startup applications in Windows 10? Which of the following would be the best way to manage startup applications in Windows 10? Would it be Event Viewer? Would it be Task Manager? Would it be System? Would it be Safe Mode? Or would it be Performance Monitor? 5 different options there for the best way to manage startup applications in Windows 10. Event Viewer, Task Manager, System, Safe Mode, Performance Monitor. You think you know the answer? Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA and see if you happen to know what that is. And please, no hints in the chat room. We don't want to do that either. To have all of those things there. Some folks in the chat room talking about using live versions, live CDs, or these days live USBs of Linux. That's a great way to learn these Linux commands. Creating a virtual machine of Linux is another great way to do this. A lot of you who don't have Windows, you'd like to study Windows for free, you can get a development lab version of Windows that Microsoft makes available at modern.ie. So you can get a VM of Windows and a VM of Linux, run them both on your screen at the same time, and learn everything you need to know for this exam. That's modern.ie, modern.ie. Yeah, Microsoft just makes a VM of Windows 10 that you can download. It's good for 90 days. As long as you only use it in a lab for non-production purposes, it's absolutely free to use, which is really, really nice to be able to do that. A lot of you are locking in your answers. I'm wondering if we've now narrowed our focus since we did that very first rewind question, and maybe we happen to know what this one is. I've not looked at the answers yet for this. Some folks in the chat room saying, you make a snapshot on day one, you don't have to worry about 90 days. Just download another one. They've got them always. They've always got a version on modern.ie. So that's the way you do it. And they'd already checked for dates. And why would you even bother doing all that nonsense? Just download an updated version and you'll have everything you need. So that would be the way to go about it. How much is a Linux machine? $0. You can download Linux pretty much anywhere in any flavor you'd like. No money required. Let's see how you did with this question. Which of the following would be the best way to manage startup applications in Windows 10? How did you answer? 74% of you say Task Manager. 19% of you say System. 4% said Safe Mode. 2% said Event Viewer. And only 1% said Performance Monitor. Well, my question for you, of course, is if Task Manager is how you manage startup applications, how are you supposed to manage startup apps after you've started? No, you're absolutely right. It's Task Manager. That's the way you do it. In fact, you would set in Task Manager all the things you would like to start up this next time through Windows, and it will allow you to enable, disable individual tasks, or you can tell it, just disable everything, and I'll start adding them in one by one as we go through this list. It used to be that we could use msconfig in earlier versions of Windows to do this, but now Microsoft has done a very good job at making that startup tab available right in Task Manager because we were using it all the time. It was a great place to go to start troubleshooting these things. And it also gave us an easy way to be able to click back and forth between processes and services and be able to see which one of these do I want to disable right now. Great way to do it. So the Startup tab within Task Manager is exactly the way you do it. So easy for it to work that way too. That's what you should use if you would like to manage a task that is holding things up during startup. Maybe your Windows is not starting up properly and you would like to go through this list and be able to do it. Nope, you would not use autoexec-bat. You would not use config.sys. You would go directly to Task Manager and use the Startup tab. See, there's some old school folks in the chat room. Answer B, Task Manager, 74% of you, a strong majority. answered that one. System is not the area. System's a little area you can go to and look at other system functionality. You can see what version of Windows you're running. You can see and change different options for your performance in your system, for graphics, for where things are indexed. That's in System. The safe mode is where you would boot up into a mode that's a minimal Windows if you were doing troubleshooting. But that's not the easy way, certainly not the best way to manage your startup applications when you can just simply start up Task Manager. 2% said Event Viewer. Event Viewer is where you can see the results and the logs of the things that were starting up, but it would not allow you to manage what was starting up on your system. That's not where that would go. And lastly, Performance Monitor gives you a feel for the performance of your system, CPU, memory, I/O, storage. You can see a lot of details there, but it doesn't allow you to enable or disable startup applications. The best place to go, Task Manager for that. That's where I would go to be able to do that. Folks in the chat room asking the link for my books and other resources. If I would like to be able to do that, I'll quickly bring it up on the page so you can get a feel for where this is. I try to put everything out on the Professor Messer website, and either in the A+ training menu all the way at the bottom are A+ study recommendations. That's exactly what you should choose. Those A+ study recommendations give you a list of those 4 categories that I always say you should have for your studies, which would be get us some videos to watch. There's a link to my videos. Make sure you have a good book. Here's some good books you can try. Get plenty of Q&A. So I give you some options for Q&A and plenty of hands-on. There's some books that have labs in them, so you can get more hands-on. That's where those come from. So that is where those focus on. Hopefully that will help you with your studies as well. Let's get another question in. We've got more to go through and get the details of this. There's a question that you might already know this one. We're going to see how well you folks know this one. The question asks, which of these would be the best way to transport a video card from one building to another? Would you use an anti-static pad? Would you use a padded folder? Would you use an anti-static strap? Would you use a box with packing peanuts? Or would you use an anti-static bag? Those are your 5 different options of the best way to transport a video card from one building to another. I have a good feeling about this one because I'm watching the numbers ramp up quickly. Folks are locking in their answer very quickly. Would I use an anti-static pad? Would I use a padded folder? Would I use an anti-static strap? Would I use a box with packing peanuts, or would I use an anti-static bag? Hopefully that's one that you could step through and figure out the details with. I think many of you might know this one, but it's an important part of the exam objectives that you're familiar with. How would you accomplish this? How would you transport any type of electronics, especially a video card, from one building to another? That's one that I've seen plenty of people get wrong. So if you're getting it right, give yourself a star. We'll tell you a little bit more details with this. What operating system do I use? So the question within a question. Well, in front of me are a number of different operating systems. For the stream that you're watching that on a Windows 10 machine. So I've got Windows 10 running there. The screen that's in front of me, or the 2 that are in front of me, are running Mac OS. And then if you are on my website right now, or you have looked at any of the things that are on my website, you are using Linux. So I run everything. I run every operating system I can get my hands on. And in reality, most employers do the same thing. There are places where Windows excels. There are places where Mac OS excels. There are places where Linux excels, and you should use the right operating system for the right job. Already you can see why I get into trouble when I do the Linux, because the Linux folks don't like to hear that. Some Linux folks really don't like to hear that, and they're very vocal about telling me how I should not say that. How dare I for those. Let's see how we did with this one to be able to make it happen. I think this is the one where I really want to break this down and see the details. Which of these would be the best way to transport a video card from one building to another? 94% of you say packing peanuts. No, you said anti-static bag. That's of course the right answer, is an anti-static bag. In fact, the worst answer here is a box with packing peanuts. The worst answer. It is so full of static. electricity. That is not one that you would want to get your equipment anywhere near. You would, of course, put it in one of these fantastic anti-static bags. Now, obviously, you might also want to put something in there that would protect it as well, but around the bag itself. And if you're ever working with equipment, I always keep the bag next to me. I'm pulling out an adapter. I'm replacing one. I always put the old adapter right on top of it or inside of it to be able to have that there. The anti-static bag is the thing you should be using to make sure that you can minimize the chance for electrostatic discharge. So it becomes very useful to have that there and make those happen. If you're trying to get more information or learn more about electrostatic discharge, it's from my video in section 4.4 of the 221002. The video name is Managing Electrostatic Discharge. Well, we didn't fool anybody with that one. That was an easy one for everybody to answer, except the folks that really thought they would go against the grain and choose anti-static pad. It would not be your anti-static pad, because that's the pad that you're either putting on top of your desk or that you are standing on. You would not wrap that around the card to move it from one building to another. That's not what the anti-static pad is for. A padded folder gives you no protection for electrostatic discharge. Not a good option there. The anti-static strap is what connects to the anti-static pad or to some type of piece of metal to minimize the chance of electrostatic discharge. And obviously, the strap is not going to reach to the other building. That would be a very long anti-static strap. And a box with packing peanuts, as we already mentioned, one of the worst things you can put your electronics in. Please, please, please don't do that. That would be scary to have all of those things there. So that is the answer, anti-static bag. We really didn't fool anybody with that one, which means we need another question. And here is the next question that asks, which of the following would allow a user to create a restore point on their computer? Which of the following would allow a user to create a restore point on their computer? Would they use Control Panel System? Would they use Administrative Tools Local Security Policy? Would they choose Administrative Tools Services? Would they choose Control Panel Credential Manager? Or would they choose Control Panel Folder Options? Those are the 5 choices on here to choose from. I wonder if I typed in the right thing here. I'm looking through the list now and going, I wonder if it's not the right thing that I was hoping it would be. I wonder if I put in the wrong piece of this. So in the meantime, I may be starting up a version of Windows on my machine so we can break through and figure out if I even did the right thing. I like doing the live demos anyway, so it's kind of nice to have all of those there. Folks in the chat room asking, I mentioned having access to a Windows computer and having that Windows VM to be in something you can download for free from Microsoft. And it's great because you can grab Microsoft's free VM from modern.ie. I use it all the time in my lab. It's fantastic. But Mac OS is not available to run for free. In fact, you can't run Mac OS as a virtual machine on your system unless it is running as a virtual machine on a version of Mac OS. So if you already had Mac OS, then you probably wouldn't need to download the VM to do tests and studies with Mac OS. So that's one of those situations where running Mac OS in a VM on any other operating system is a violation of the EULA, the End User License Agreement, and that won't work at all. Let me see if I can log into my Windows machine here. I'm trying to figure out my password. I'm probably going to get locked out. There, I did. I figured it out. Folks in the chat room also thinking about Linux versions and what I would recommend. I would say, what do you think probably is the most popular Linux distribution in corporate America? I would probably think it'd be Red Hat or its more free version CentOS. I would imagine Red Hat would be probably number 1. What would be number 2? Would it be an IBM distribution maybe? Would it be a different kind? Probably Red Hat is such the market. They have a huge market available to do this. So I would probably focus on Red Hat. That's probably, Red Hat, the quote-unquote free version of Red Hat is CentOS. So that's the kind of the open source, it's the community version of all of these. So hopefully that can give you a feel for what you need to look for on your version of Linux. Although a lot of people, if you're running it at home, you're probably running Ubuntu. You're probably running Maybe you're running Linux Mint, another good one to run at home. Those can help you out too with this. So let's go back to our question, which I've now confirmed I was not doing. I was thinking right. I have the right answers here. The question asks, which of the following would allow a user to create a restore point on their computer? Would it be control panel system? Would it be administrative tools, local security policy? Would it be administrative tools, services? Would it be control panel, credential manager? Or would it be control panel, folder options? And 77% of you said you would use control panel system to be able to make that happen. And I think we should go through control panel system and have a look at what you would find under that configuration. In fact, under the system properties, you will find quite a number of things. I'm going to go back into my control panel system. I'm going to try to bring it up on the screen so you can get a feel for what these things might be. I'll need to move my whole window. One moment, everybody. One moment, everybody. Here we go. There is a VM I've got running of Windows 10, and I am in control panel system to be able to see this. Under control panel system, as I mentioned, it tells you the version of Windows that you're running. It tells you, I don't think this is one that is maybe this actually is one of that I've got from the Microsoft download that I'm running in the lab. And you've got a number of options here. The option here that we were looking at for this one, back up on here, we want to do a restore point under system protection. Let's see if I can get my mouse moving properly on this one. Running a VM with a mouse, sometimes challenging. Oh, now I got to put a super secret password. I wonder if I even have that there. I should probably gone to the screens, the system properties view. In fact, let's do that. And if you did that, this is what you'd get right there. Get that system properties view instead of watching and trying to make me remember. Yeah, it's password 123. It's Ninja. And if you go into that system properties, choose the system protection, it'll bring up this dialog box where you have the option right under here, under the configure option, to configure restore settings, manage disk space, and delete restore points. You can also create a restore point right now for the drives that have system protection turned on. You simply click the create button and it'll be able to pull those up too. So you got a few options that you could choose from whenever you go into the system options for the restore point. And you can play around with those too and see if that is what you want to be able to run to allow a user to create a restore point on their computer. Control panel system, that was where you wanted to go. 77% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video, by the way, for continuing education unit credit, and you would like me to send you an email that has been digitally signed by me that says you watch this and you get 1 hour of a webinar-based CEU, then follow these instructions. You have to follow these instructions or you don't get the CEU because there's an automated process that relies on you doing this. So that's why. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link, step number 1. Step number 2, once you click Contact Us, there's a form. Fill out the form. Put in your name, put in your email address, and perhaps step 2B is make sure that when you're filling out that form under the subject line, please put this is the February 2020 A+ study group. And somewhere on a single line in the text, in the body of that message, put the super secret code word restore point. That is our super secret code word of the month, restore point. And you would be able to submit that. Then it will come to me. You can also put anything else you'd like in there. I'm the one reading through all of these. And then I will go through them, hopefully by the end of this week, and be able to send those all back to you. I try to do that every week, sometimes every 2 weeks. So be patient with me, and we'll get those back to you. It's not something that shows up automatically. It's a process I go through on my side where I confirm everything's correct, and then I send that back to you. So very useful to have that functionality. Is this what it's like to restore a backup? It's too many steps. No, it's much easier to restore a backup. You can restore it from startup, from Windows Startup. Hit the F8 key, and you've got an option there to restore a backup. There you go. How's that? That's one step. That's pretty easy. You can, of course, go back into this view under Control Panel System, choose the System Protection tab, and then you can perform a system restore right there. You can undo system changes. I don't think that's too many steps. I think you'll do okay. You probably don't want to put it on the main desktop, right? you probably want to give people a couple of extra steps to think about what they're doing to be able to have that. Those CEUs, by the way, are good now. They're good for replays. They're good whenever you want to send them in. You can watch previous videos. Because I'm giving you that super secret code word, you must have watched that. We're not taking it completely on faith to have that there. Let's get another question in. We got some time, so let's squeeze another question in for what we're doing. This question, a little bit longer one, asks, a user has received an email that shows the sender is the corporate help desk, but the help desk did not send the email. Which of the following would best describe this issue? Would it be man in the middle? Would it be DOS? Would it be social engineering? Would it be spoofing? Would it be zero-day attack? 5 different options there. A user has received an email that shows the sender is the corporate help desk, but the help desk did not send the email. Dun, dun, dun. Which of the following would best describe this issue? Would it be man in the middle? Would it be DOS? Would it be social engineering? Would it be spoofing? Would it be zero-day attack? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. You can lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no answers or hints in the chat room either. We'll figure that out and get all of those. Yes, the CEUs are the continuing education units. You can earn for your A+. I think you can earn 4 webinar-based CEUs in one single 3-year renewal cycle. So you have to get 20 hours. I can get you 4 of those. So you'll need more. I think these days most people are probably using the CertMaster CE, which is a way to renew online in just a few hours. And they're not going through this collecting CEUs and submitting the CEUs. There's a little more in there that people are worrying about. So that's where I would go to think about where you're breaking those down, having them there. Let's see how you do with this one. This would be something, isn't it? I get these all the time, by the way, that show that the sender is one person and that sender never sent that email to me. Happens all. We could probably go through my inbox right now, my spam box, and find a few of those to have those in the system. Let's see how you did with this one. A little slower as we watch those come in. How did we do? 63% of you say it's spoofing, but 28% of you say that it's social engineering. That's a good chunk, well over a quarter of you. 7% said man in the middle. 1% said DOS, a denial of service. 1% said zero-day attack for all of those. Well, anytime you see anyone on your network pretending to be someone they aren't, just blatantly telling you, no, that's who I am, that's a spoofer. That's somebody who's spoofing. They're spoofing a web server. They're spoofing an IP address. They're spoofing an email address, like in this example, where the person sending you the email really isn't who's sending it. Unfortunately, there are no good ways to protect against this because email is inherently insecure. It just does not have any security mechanisms built into it that allow us to verify that it really came from that person. We have to use other add-ons to our email to be able to provide that. For example, we just talked about you sending me the request for the CEU. I'm going to send you back an email that has been digitally signed by me, which means you can confirm that I was the one who sent you that email. You can confirm that nothing in that email has been changed. So there's some nice cryptography there that allows us to do that. So spoofing wouldn't work. If somebody spoofed an email to you that says, hi, I'm Professor Messer, you earned 99 of these credits, and they put no digital signature on, you can't trust that. So that's not a good way to do it. Now, just because somebody is spoofing a name, an email address, or something else doesn't necessarily mean they're doing this for nefarious reasons. There may be a good reason to spoof an IP address in a network management capability. So there are certain router configurations that we might configure that spoof IP addresses on there. So that's exactly where you would go to have some of those things work that way. I think whenever I start looking at where I would see this most often, those people will use that spoofing if they are planning to do something like a man-in-the-middle attack, or they're planning to send me an email. Those would be great ways to be able to have that. And you can absolutely have a look in this case that this was an email spoofing to be able to do this. Now, is the social engineering? I guess in some way it is. In this particular case, the social engineering was done over electronic means and somebody pretending to be who they are. But the question asked which of these options would best describe this issue, because I didn't actually say that they were trying to get us to do anything. All it said was that you got an email that the help desk sent, but the help desk really didn't send it. It didn't say that it asked you to do something. It didn't say that it asked for a spreadsheet with everyone's passwords. It didn't say that, in fact, it could have been blank. Could have been blank email. So in this case, the best option here is spoofing. If you answered D, spoofing, that is the right answer. 63% of you got that one right. Social engineering, if they, within that email, had then asked you and said, hi, we're contacting you from the help desk because it's time to change your password. Simply place your new password into this email along with your old password and your email address and your login name and send that back to us. Well, okay, that would be social engineering as well. We could tack that onto the list. Man in the middle is a situation where neither side of the conversation even knows that someone is listening. So you would not even know that the email was sent from someone who wasn't the help desk because the person in the middle is not allowing you to see that information. The person in the middle is just simply watching, gathering information. In some cases can be changing information. So man in the middle is a completely different scenario in and of itself. A denial of service would be blocking something from working, denying the service from working. So a DOS, a denial of service. In this case, it wasn't a denial of service. Nobody was denying anything. All that happened was you got an email that wasn't really from somebody who sent it. And a zero-day attack, in this case, there's no attack taking place. There's no vulnerability that's being exploited that nobody knew about. There's nobody trying to grab something from those pieces. A zero-day attack is not the one in this particular case to have that there. Could a man-in-the-middle intercept email? They could. Man-in-the-middle attacks very commonly do that. This is not an email interception in this case either, though. So this would not apply for man-in-the-middle. Nothing about this one screams man-in-the-middle at all, in fact. So I would not put that in the man-in-the-middle category. Social engineering, if there was something in the email that told us in this question that they were trying to manipulate us to do something, we could perhaps put this in the social engineering category, but I would still, this question asks, which would best describe this issue. Everything in this one started and ended with spoofing. And 63% of you got that one absolutely right. It was spoofing. That is what we did to have that there. One of the things you'll notice that all the questions that we asked today came directly from the 221,002 exam objectives. Make sure you have these objectives. Absolutely go into these objectives. You can find them at professormesser.com/objectives. I'll give you a link right to the CompTIA website. They are extensive. Do we even have them up on my screen? I don't think I do. I'm going to find them here real quick just to show you how detailed these objectives are, because this is how important they are. I had people tell me, oh, I didn't download them. I figured, who's going to need these things? Here's the objectives right here. Got them on the screen. For example, section 1.0 operating systems. 1.1 says to compare and contrast common operating system types and their purposes. 32-bit versus 64-bit. What are the RAM limitations? What is software compatibility between those two? Workstation operating systems such as Microsoft Windows, Apple Macintosh OS, Linux. Cell phone tablet operating systems, goes through those. Vendor-specific limitation, all details. When we talked about Microsoft command lines, it tells you all the command lines you need to know for the exam. There they are. You don't have to go outside this scope. You stick to this scope and know every single one of those exams, you're going to do fine. So that's an example, and this goes pages and pages and pages and pages of content to be able to break all that out. And in the back, they have acronyms. So if you're ever trying to figure out where do I get all these acronyms from, that's where you get them from. Find that all in the exam objectives. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives is exactly where you would go to get that. We do one of these study groups every month. Come back in March. On March 17th and 19th is our 221,001 and 221,002 A+ study groups. That's another weird month in March where I'm cramming some things together. The week after that, on the 24th is our Network Plus study group, and on the 26th is our Security Plus study group. So if you follow us also for Network Plus and Security Plus, make sure you check the calendar. Crazy things are going on in my schedule these days. So always check the calendar. You can always find that at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, we got through an hour of Q&A, but stick around. I'm going to turn this around so that you can ask me questions. I'll take questions from the chat room. I'll take questions from a telephone over voice communication. Yes, some of us still do that. In the meantime, you can always follow us on Twitter for our daily pop quiz question. That's professormesser.com/Twitter. You can follow us on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. It really does go a long way. I now have somebody at YouTube that I can talk with. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. We've also got course notes available at professormesser.com/1000notes. Don't forget to support us on Amazon as well at professormesser.com/Amazon. And I've also got those pop quiz questions on Instagram for you Instagram people. professormesser.com/Instagram will get you there. Well, thanks for joining us. We could not do this without you. We love having you here. Thank you, chat room. Thanks, everybody. Stick around for the next hour. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Now let's see if I can get my stuff together here and get dialed into my phone lines and get everybody up and running. You can also put questions into the chat room because now it's the after show, everybody, where there's no real set agenda. I don't have any questions for you. I don't have any topics for you. I spend about half a day putting together the first half of this study group, so we're good to be able to have that there. Let me get this running. Some of these things need to be changed on my side. There we go. I need to call into my own show because it's all in the cloud. We didn't have any cloud questions this time. I guess all the cloud's on the 221001, isn't it? So I need to call into my cloud by going to Skype. There's an inside joke that is old school. Skype. Just going to do that. So I'm going to call in, and it's going to say, thank you for calling this thing. Please type in a thing. And it says, enter your 6-digit PIN number. I put in a PIN number. I'm going to change that one of these days, which I keep telling you I'm going to do. Welcome, which means you are now able to call in on those phone lines as well. You can put a question into the chat room if you're here live at professormesser.com/live or on YouTube in the YouTube chat. It's the same chat. It's just one that I can see in one place. You can also call in anywhere in the continental U.S. It's a toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. You can also call in from anywhere else with 855-785-7545. For example, if you want to call in from outside of the continental U.S., you can use Skype, which is absolutely free. That's a great way to do it. Skype will allow you to call in at 855-785-7545, but he put a +1 at the beginning of that. +1, 855-785-7545 would get you there, and you can put those into that view and ask any question you'd like as well. I think that's a great place to go. Before we get to some of the questions in the chat, a lot of Linux questions today. Let's go to the phone lines. 858 area code. Hello, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Hi, this is Frank. I'm calling from San Diego, California.
Hi, Frank. You've called before. What can we do for you, sir?
Yeah. So you probably know I'm studying for A+, and I passed Core 1 back in December. I'm studying for Core 2.
Nice.
And I'm having some trouble with Core 2. Especially when it comes to, studying for the Windows tools and utilities, because there's no consistency. They have it all over the place.
Right.
Like you want to do A, you go to control panel. You want to do B, you go to command prompt.
Yep.
You want to do C, you go to type it in the search bar. And Microsoft took control panel. Well, they didn't take it away. But they buried it under, Windows system, and then they came up with this settings button. So it's like I sit in front of my computer and I see my reflection on the monitor, and I see smoke rising out of my head.
Right.
So I was wondering if you have some strategy, some tips, tricks on how to study for these?
I don't think a lot of people really realize that the 1002 exam, very different in content, very different, not necessarily in style, but because you're dealing with operating systems and security, it's a very different set of topics than the 1001 that people may be more accustomed to with hardware and working inside of the computer. We're sort of now in the operating system. And to your point, Microsoft has really created quite a mess of their user interface. I think I'm being nice when I say that. I think Microsoft people would recognize, yeah, we're in kind of this transition phase right now of moving from the old style UI into our newer style of user interface. And so the problem is we're in that middle point, and some things are in kind of the old place, the new place, and some things you just can't find much at all. Now, fortunately, and I will say, by the way, before I mention this, a lot of the study materials that I've seen online really spend a lot of time emphasizing how you find a particular utility, how you find a particular function, how you find. In fact, one of the questions I did today gave you some options on where you would find different things, and I gave you some of those, but that was probably the extent of what you would need to know to be able to get to a particular utility. What I found on most of these exam questions is they're not going to ask you details about how you would get from point A to point B. They just want you to do that. I could see, for example, them putting you at a Windows 10 desktop and telling you, disable this particular program from running during the startup process. Okay, you can think to yourself, okay, I need to get to Task Manager. How do I get to Task Manager? Well, you can go to the search, which is what we all do. You type in task and you choose Task Manager, which, by the way, is a completely legitimate way to do it. You could right mouse click into the bar at the bottom of the screen and choose Task Manager. You could do a Control Shift Escape. Is that the one? Am I doing it right? So use different keys. There's so many different ways to do this. But I guess my point to this is, don't worry about all those different ways. The CompTIA exam is not going to ask you 20 questions on how you happen to negotiate the Windows front end to be able to find one of these things. All they're really going to talk to you about is which one of these utilities is going to be the right one to use. Are you going to use Performance Manager? Are you going to use Computer Manager? Are you going to use Event Viewer? Which one is the best one to use in this scenario? They know that you're going to be able to find it, especially these days with Windows 10. You just go to the search bar, you type in task, and Task Manager comes up. So they're not so worried about that part anymore. They're more worried about, in a particular scenario, are you the smart enough to know which one of those you should go after first to be able to solve a particular problem?
Got it. Thank you. Can I ask a couple more questions about Wake on LAN?
Let's do that.
Okay, so you shut the computer off, and supposedly this Wake on LAN sends this so-called magic packet, and it wakes it up. It wakes the NIC up. I mean, this is maybe a stupid question to you, but I'm thinking, okay, so if the NIC doesn't have any power going to it, how does this magic packet magically wakes it up? I don't get that.
Well, one of the things that you'll notice on all computers these days is that they never actually turn off. You'll notice if you look at a power supply in a computer that there's always this 5-volt SB power coming out of the power supply. The SB is the standby power on this computer. So that is where you get some of this functionality from, is that the computer's never actually turned off. It is sitting there and waiting for things to happen. So this wake on LAN, so waking up, W-A-K, you'll see it abbreviated as W-O-L, wake on LAN, is perfect for people who are system administrators who now need to have a system, wake up at 4 in the morning, go grab the latest patches, patch that particular system, and then put itself back to sleep or power off. It is always sitting there and waiting for something to happen. As long as the BIOS of your system and the network card support that wake on LAN, they will sit there and constantly keep listening in for that magic packet to appear. And that is something that these days practically every modern computer is going to do. You'll be hard pressed to find one that doesn't these days, especially in an enterprise, because if you were an enterprise administrator, you can't do these updates during the day. You have to reboot people's machines. It's a mess. So you have to have some way to force that machine to wake up, to turn on, so that you can then run through all of those. Wake on LAN's a great way to do it.
Thank you. Just one last thing. I just wanted to mention, on a shoestring budget, your content is amazing. The quality of the product, the quality of your notes, the quality of your videos, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you, sir.
We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for using them, and thank you for going through the process, and best of luck with your 1002 studies.
Thank you. Bye.
Whenever I start getting into or trying to break into figuring out all those things in Windows, I see so many questions like that. Don't worry about all those questions, and being able to break through that. Knowing the right utility to use at the right time is more important than knowing where to move your mouse to get to that utility. Trust me, inside of Windows. And thank you, Frank, for the comment about our products. I started this business to make the highest quality products I could, as someone who has come from both a corporate training background and someone who has spent a long time as a systems engineer and taken 20, I think, different certification exams. I think I have a pretty good idea of what people need to be able to get through a certification exam. That was our goal. How can we create free content, or content that is at least lowest cost as it can be and still be better than what you could buy for something else that's out there? And that's what we strive to do every time we make one of our products. So thank you. Quickly back to the chat room. There was a question earlier about Linux and what Linux to use for beginners. I mentioned two that are really good for beginners. One is Ubuntu. It's a great one to use for beginners. If I had to put a version of Linux on my grandmother's machine, that's the one I would use, Ubuntu. It feels a lot like Windows. It's got a lot of the things that you need. It's got everything you need to be able to surf and do your email and everything else. So great way to go. Another one is Linux Mint, another great distribution. Those are good ones to start with. If you are interested in learning Linux from a corporate Linux administrator perspective, you could jump right into Red Hat, or the kind of the community version of that, the open source version of that, which is CentOS. Red Hat's the one you would go with if you were trying to tell people, oh, I'm here for your Linux help desk, your Linux intro administrator position, and I have worked with Red Hat before. Those are great things to say. The difference is, if you ever worked in Linux and you start up Linux and you get you're getting this Linux machine up and running, you may find these server versions of Linux put you just at a Linux prompt. There's no graphical front end. So if you're trying to learn Linux, it's a lot more difficult to deal with. So if you're a learner of Linux, Ubuntu is a great place to learn. Linux Mint is a great place to learn. And then maybe you migrate yourself over to Red Hat. That might be a way to break those down. And I agree, there's a great community around Mint, a great community around Ubuntu. So if you have questions, you're thinking, I ran into a stopping point, plenty of people in the forums there that can help you out as well for those. So that might be something to help you out as well. Let's go back to the phones. The 406 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. 406. You hear a beep whenever I pick up the phone. That's me picking it up. And make sure you're listening to the phone calls to have all of those things there. We'll stick you back in the queue. Maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe you had to step away. So we'll go to the 949 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Vernon Adams. I'm calling from Orange County, California.
Hi, Vernon. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, well, I was on your, I spoke to you probably about maybe 2.5 years ago when I was studying for my A+, and just wanted you to know I thank you for everything you do. I finally got my A+ last year,
Nice.
and it wasn't easy.
It's kind of a tough exam. I think people don't realize just how much is in those.
So
Congratulations.
I barely passed by the skin of my teeth, and just passing is all that matters. So I did get a job in IT, and
Nice.
I got to thank you for it, and a lot of other resources I used. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for what you do, and I appreciate it.
I thank you for the
everybody else
call.
that might be listening. yeah, if everybody might be listening, my little 2 cents.
Yes, please.
The exam it's not just an exam. It's a game, you know, and you got to play it the CompTIA way. And like one of your previous callers was asking about how you know how to access all these other. There's many ways to get to one aspect of it, and you just got to eliminate all the bad answers, and you're left with, you know, a choice. And so you got to kind of play the CompTIA game when you're taking the test, and just it's their game, and you just got to answer it the best way you can.
I love the story, and thank you very much for calling and giving us a follow-up on all of these things that you've gotten to and into your IT job, which I think is fantastic. I mentioned on the last study group that I love hearing about that, getting that first job in IT, because I know the sky's the limit at that point, because I got to be that person in IT from the very bottom and work all the way to the very top. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I don't know if you remember our conversation. The one thing that we kind of stood out was I talked about some Dante audio networking with you, and I was like, I got laid off, and I just turned 50, so it's never too late to start, guys. So I'm proof of that.
It's great to hear. Thank you, Vernon. I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much, Professor Musser. You're welcome.
And you did the hard part too, which was going through all of that and figuring it out and knowing what to do. And to your point, the strategy you use on the exam is almost as important as knowing the content itself. There's so many tools that can help you on the exam. Make sure you know about what to expect during the exam, that there is a flag option, that you can jump to any question at any time, that CompTIA tends to ask these questions about which is the best, what is the first thing you should do. So you should be prepared for questions like that. They don't ask trivia questions. They don't ask you a question that says, what does the abbreviation TKIP stand for? They will never ask you a question like that. They instead are going to ask you for much broader questions, such as, where would you use TKIP? What functionality does that bring to the table? What would you replace it with? Those are better questions. In fact, in the industry, we sort of forget the abbreviations. We often forget the words themselves. We just use the abbreviations so much. Back to the phones. We're going to quickly check back to 406. Hi, caller. Did you make it back? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. My phone was on mute.
Oh, I hate that when that happens. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, of course. Anyways, it was Everett Converse, and my question was, I recently just passed the 1001, and after taking that test, I realized that, I memorized a lot of facts, figures, and numbers, and basic conceptual knowledge, and figured I'd get through it, and had a tough time. I did pass. I had a tough time with the conditional and procedural-based questions as far as, you were just explaining that they're more, it's how to do it, not just, what to do, I guess, in a way.
Right.
And I wanted to ask that with the 1002 being more command and performance-based, like the command line and whatnot, if there's a way to focus my studies on individual switches and options, or a better way to prepare for those conditional questions.
Wow, what a good question, because you'll notice, and I showed in the exam objectives, I showed all of those Microsoft commands. I'm going to bring these up on the screen for people that might have missed that earlier. But I brought up, here is the list on the exam of all the Microsoft command lines they expect you to know. But you'll notice they don't put any of the flags, any of the additional command options on these. For example, they give you the option to, bring this back to my screen, they give the option netstat. Netstat has, I don't know, 1 million options associated with it. There are flags upon options upon things that you could use, but they're not expecting you to memorize all 1 million different options in netstat, thankfully. What they're really hoping you know is, when would you use these? What would you do? What's the main emphasis of netstat? Why would you use netstat over traceroute over ipconfig? In what scenarios would task kill be better than running a GP update? Those are the types of things they want to know. Now, combined with that, I didn't even show this one earlier, is if we keep flipping, there's an entire section of Linux commands, ls, grep, cd, shutdown. In fact, I think there's more Linux commands than there might be Microsoft. There's just as many, it seems. So it's another scenario. When would you use MV versus CP? When would you use move versus copy? So those are the types of questions you're going to get in the exam. If I were you, and if I was somebody who was listening in and watching this right now, and you're trying to figure out how do I memorize all of these switches and different things, I would tell you not to memorize any of them. I tell you to forget about switches and options. I give you a few that are in my video so you can get a feel for what this product does, what that utility does. Some of them require you put some of those options in there, and I give you just one or two of the most popular. But if I had to study for these, I would not really worry about the switches and the options. I would focus more on what does that utility do for me, because there is so much more in this exam that you need to worry about. And I think that's your advantage here, is that section 1.4, which talks about knowing all of those Microsoft command tools, is one part of one section, which has sections 1.1 through 1.9. And of that section 1.1 through 1.9, that is only going to be 27% of the entire exam. So 1/9 of 27% could possibly be questions that might have something to do with flags and options on a command line. So you can kind of see here, you may get no questions about those, but the questions that you would get would be so small compared to the rest of the exam that you're almost doing yourself a disservice by not spending more time on the other topics. So don't get wrapped around the axle with options. Don't get wrapped around the axle with the minutia that you think might be there. In fact, I find it unique and interesting and important that CompTIA didn't put any options on here. And one of the things I always tell people, stick to the objectives, stick to the objectives. If it's not in the objectives, don't bother learning it. If somebody's giving you information that they say is on the exam and it's not in the objectives, don't bother learning it. Stick to the objectives. And if you know every single thing that's in these objectives, then you're going to do fine on your exam. You're not going to have to worry too much about any of the other details. So that's my recommendation to you. Get a feel for that. You can watch my videos and see me use some of the flags so you can see how this utility is used, but don't worry about the details of that. Get a better, higher level view and spend the rest of your time learning everything else.
Okay. Well, lastly, thank you very much, by the way. I wanted to ask, I didn't look, I probably should have checked, but is there a list of how many procedural-based questions versus multiple choice there are?
There is not a list. There's only what we have heard from other people who've taken the exam and what CompTIA has done through the years. So you've got those two types of questions on the exam, the performance-based questions and the multiple choice-based questions. You will get, as I tend to describe it, a handful of performance-based questions at the beginning of the exam. You might get 3, you might get 5, you might get 7. You just never know exactly how many, but that's it. That's all you're going to get at the beginning of the exam. The rest of the exam is all going to be multiple choice, and all of those together are only going to be a maximum of 90 questions, although we get reports all the time that people get as few as 80 questions on the exam. So you may not even get 90. I think they try to weight it properly depending on how complicated the performance-based questions might be. But I don't know that for sure. CompTIA doesn't tell us, but I have a feeling that's the case. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody get 90 full questions on their exam. Maybe one person, but that's rare too. But don't expect a ton of those performance-based questions. In fact, my strategy that I tell people that works for me is I skip over the performance-based questions. I go right to the multiple choice. I try to get through as many of those or all of those as fast as I can. And what I find is when I circle back to the performance-based questions, they're asking me sometimes about things that I just remember talking about or learning about or hearing about in the multiple choice. So the multiple choice questions actually help you answer other questions on the exam. That may be a good strategy for you too.
I did the exact same thing, honestly. I think that's perfect because I remember reading the performance questions and being a little self-conscious or psyched out because my mind was running a mile a minute.
Right.
And when I skipped to the multiple choice, I was able to focus it down, and then, it just made it easier.
great. I think that's a great strategy. It doesn't work for everybody, but if you're someone like me and like you, where you sit in the exam and there's anxiety and you're a nervous wreck by the time you get in there, you need some time to kind of settle down, get into the flow of things, and then everything goes much better.
All right. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you.
That's always a challenge. When I get into those exams, I'm not a good exam taker. I put a lot of pressure on. I get in there, I sit in the seat, and I mentioned this in the last study group, that there is a section at the beginning of the exam before the exam officially starts. So they're not counting any of your time off in the exam. They give you a candidate agreement that you have to read through and then sign at the bottom. And I think one of the things that would probably help me with these CompTIA exams especially is they give you minutes of time to read through the candidate agreement and sign it. But what do most of us do? We scroll the bottom and click OK and we're on our way. We did it in 5 seconds. For some of us, especially me, it may do better for me to sit there. I've already read through the candidate agreement. I might read through it again. I might take all of those 7 minutes or whatever it is they're giving me these days to sit there, settle into the seat, get comfortable in the room, get a feel for reading the screen, clean off that section where they haven't cleaned the screen in a long time so you can see what's going on. Use the old mouse that's still got the ball in it so you can kind of scroll through it, kind of get into the mode, and then say, okay, I agree to the candidate agreement, and then continue on. That might help too, to be able to get you through all of the details. Always a challenge to get through. As I mentioned, the strategy for how you handle the exam, sometimes more important than the content itself. Back to the phones, the 386 area code. Hello, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Yes, Professor. My name is Charles. I'm calling from Lake City, Florida.
All right, Lake City. What can we do for you, Charles?
Yes, sir. I'm a student with WGU, and I'm preparing to take the 1001 half of the A+ on Monday. And I'm trying to do the practice exams with the college. It's an online school.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm stuck. I'm at most of the questions about the computers. When it gets to the basic networking portion of the I guess they ask you basic networking. I feel like I'm stuck. I'll try to sit there, and I've been watching your broadcast, and you said not memorize the answer. I've been trying to memorize it, and I guess I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah, because the questions you get on your exam would be very different than the questions you get on these samples that you're going through, for sure. No doubt. So whenever you get into these...
I feel like I'm...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things I tend to focus on, and one of the things sort of my mantra is, I always tell people, get the exam objectives, get the exam objectives, get the exam objectives. Do you feel that the questions you're getting are properly applying back to the exam objectives?
Yeah.
And that's...
I feel that it's very hard for me to memorize the answer. And I feel like some of them are trick questions.
And without knowing the exam questions or the sample questions you're getting specifically, it's hard to know that as well. You mentioned getting those questions from WGU and what you're doing there. Have you tried any sample questions from other sources? There are sources on the internet. There are books that I recommend on my site that are just incomplete books of Q&A. Have you had a chance to go through other kinds to see if it has a similar style to it?
I downloaded one of the practice tests from CompTIA's website, and then I've been watching your videos on YouTube to help get a better feel, I guess. But I just wonder if you have any advice on how to get out of this feeling stuck mode.
I think it really comes down to knowing the content and working with it. I always say there's 4 things you need to be able to do to really feel comfortable and be prepared for these exams. One is to get a good book, because I think books will tell you in a way that provides a ton of detail. A book is able to teach you in a way that other things can't. So a good book is really important. The other one is to get good videos, because seeing someone doing these tasks is a lot different than reading it in a book. So they really work together. The third one is doing some Q&A like you're doing here. And the fourth one, which is probably the one that's most overlooked, is getting hands-on. I think the more you work with an operating system, with a network, with configuring an IP address and a subnet mask and configuring the default gateways, I think if you do that yourself, it helps solidify those things in your mind in a way that a book or a video with its passive teaching method can't do. So I think combining those things together becomes very, very useful. And if you haven't gotten into your machine and looked at your configuration and looked at the configuration that's on your home router and looked at what the IP addresses are and where the default gateway is configured, those are great things. And the more labs you can do, and I think WGU has some great labs on their systems, do more of those labs, because I think that will help you answer questions that come up on the exam as well.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the call. Those four things become so important. Can you get away with doing less than that? You could. But I think if you want to maximize how well you're going to do on the exam, it's all four of those: books, videos, Q&A, and hands-on. And I think you're in good shape. Let's go back to the phones. 360 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Alex, and I'm calling from Centralia, Washington.
All right. Thanks, Alex. What can we do for you?
So actually, I'm also a student at WGU.
Oh, all right.
And I'll be honest, the one thing that helped me the most was actually your study notes, the printout that I made of the PDF that I bought from you.
Right.
I got the A+ and the Network Plus pretty much all down to your help with that.
It's a good, I find it's a good quick reference.
question.
It's why I made it that way, so that people could go to one place and say, what were those Linux commands again? And they could pull it up at any point and just get a feel for them. Okay, grep does this, cd does this, shutdown does that, and kind of go through the different options of what's there. It's a nice summary of everything, I think.
Oh, yeah. I love those. It's great. But I did have a question about the Linux portion with the A+.
Sure.
What is the difference between what's covered in the A+ with Linux versus Linux Plus? Because that's the next thing that I'm going to go to is Linux Plus.
Well, good, because now you're going from one extreme to the other. The A+ command, or the A+ certification, has a section on some of the most used Linux tools, things like how you would do images, what terminal is, what screen sharing is used with Linux. It gives you some basic Linux commands. So if you are an administrator of a Linux machine, or you needed to configure someone's IP address on that Linux machine, or you needed to change somebody's password or move a file from one place to another, that's the A+ exam. It's very similar to the things you have to know for Windows at the command prompt. That's what they show you for Linux. But the Linux Plus certification takes this to a completely different level. You are now approaching this as the administrator of a Linux machine. How would you install Linux? What is the structure of the file system? What file systems would you use in Linux to be able to get running? When Linux doesn't boot properly, what options are available? None of those things are gone through in the A+ exam. All of that is in Linux Plus, and a lot more as well, because there's so many other things you have to know to be an administrator on a Linux machine that the Linux Plus really does focus on those Linux pieces for the administrator side. So I think A+ gives you your first little taste of Linux, maybe gets you interested in the operating system, gives you the basics of how you can copy files around and change ownerships and look at processes. But Linux Plus is going to give you a completely different and much more detailed view of how to administer this Linux machine. And when you're done with Linux Plus, you should be ready to build a Linux machine, get it up and running, support applications that are running on it, be able to back it up, and be able to restore it if there's a problem.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your answer, and I appreciate all that you do online and helping all of us pass our tests, and it's great.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Take care. That's always good to hear, too, that there's a next step. We always should be thinking, what's the next step with this? Folks in the chat room are asking, is this live? Well, it's pre-live. I think you see it about 5 seconds after I say it, but it's live enough. It's live enough. Vicky is asking in the chat room, is that live? So that should help. That should help, Vicky. I think that's cleared that up. But a 224 area code. Hey, caller, which name are you calling from? Oh, look, hear myself. Look, that 5 seconds. That was right on the money. Are you there, caller? Hello, hello. There's a beep that you hear, so we can hear you, and we can hear your computer.
Yes.
There you are. Hi. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Chicago, and pretty much I got past the A+. Had received all your notes. I got your notes on your site.
Thank you.
Everything. And pretty much I'm going for my Network Plus right now, and after that, my Security Plus. I've been using your site, which is very high quality content, and I thank you for that. It's like one of the best, pretty much, compared to all these other sites that I've been to. But there's another site that provides like very high quality content, and that's IT Pro TV. What do you think about them?
I don't know. I really haven't. Oddly enough, it may surprise you that I don't go out to the internet very much to look at what everybody else is doing. I'm so detailed and focused on trying to get things done here. When the lights turn off here and we aren't live, I'm pretty much writing new content every moment of the day. I often tell people I work half day, 8 to 8. The reality is it's more like 7 to 10, but it's constant writing. So I don't, and I don't have any professional relationships with any of these other sites either. So I really have not spent any time. I know they're out there. It's not that I don't know that they exist. I know they're out there. I just have not spent any time to know anything really about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's kind of bad for me. I probably should spend more time doing it. I'm just so focused on getting content out the door that I just haven't spent any time on it. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I have another question. I was just like, for the certifications, it's just like, I gotta I want to make sure I pass these certifications, and I'm like looking at all these study materials. I'm looking at a ton of video series or different books and stuff like that. Like, when do you think you're prepared to go out there, and you think when do you think you're ready?
For me, the way that I think about it is I use, at least for the CompTIA exams, I use the CompTIA exam objectives. They are a detailed set of everything you need to know to be able to pass the exam. So I brought up a list of the objectives earlier. That list is extremely detailed. In fact, I've had people come to my site before and they go, I took the exam. There was a lot of things on the exam I was not expecting. And I asked, well, what topic did you see on the exam that you weren't expecting? They said, well, they asked a question about software token or port security or certificates or cable locks, whatever it happened to be. And I said, well, those are listed very specifically in the exam objectives that you need to summarize the importance of physical security measures, including man traps and biometric locks and cable locks. They go, oh, I didn't download that and look at it because I just thought it was a broad overview of the exam. Like, they didn't even realize that there was so much detail in here that you can use this as a checklist. So you should be able to go to any one of these and say, given a scenario, implement appropriate data destruction and disposal methods. Physical destruction, what does a shredder do for me? How does that help me with having data and disposal? What is a drill or hammer used for? What is degaussing in electromagnetic form? What is incineration, and when would I use that? What is a certificate of destruction? And if I can, in my mind, or somebody who's stuck having to listen to me, explain that to someone else, I think I can check those off. But if I'm looking at this list and saying, wait, I know what all those things are, but what's a certificate of destruction? I need to go back to my materials. I need to go back to my notes. I need to go back to the videos and the books and figure out more of what that is. Then I know it. Then I can check it off the list and go the next thing. This is a extremely comprehensive view. And as I mentioned earlier, if you know everything that is in these exam objectives, you are going to do just fine on your exam. I used to say you're going to pass with no problem. I really still believe that, but I'm trying to couch it a little bit better for folks. Spend your time knowing everything that's in this list and you're going to breeze right through this exam, no problem at all. For your CompTIA exams, I think that's one of the best things you can do to make yourself aware of, are you ready for this exam or not? And then it helps, of course, to go through some Q&A to really verify if you knew these exam objectives. And if you can get through that Q&A and you feel comfortable with it, it's time to take that exam.
Right. Okay. And then what do you think of the CEH certification?
You're referring to the Certified Ethical Hacker Cert?
Yeah.
I've looked at a little bit of what it offers. I think some of the content in their exam objectives is pretty good. The CEH certification is one that is very polarizing in the industry. People either like it or they don't like it. They have had some significant security breaches to their systems over the years. Whenever you take the CEH exam, you have to provide them with some photo IDs and send that to them. And unfortunately, the hackers got a hold of everybody's photo IDs and very famously put Edward Snowden's copy of his passport out on the internet as proof that they hacked into it. So all you have to do is look for CEH and Edward Snowden, and you'll see all of the reports of the hack. And that was only one of the hacks. So they perhaps maybe ironically don't have the best security history to fall back on. Perhaps now they've fixed all of those things and things are better along those lines. What I tell other people is that I'm not going to give them my personal information. That's all I can really say about the CEH exam.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Professor.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. It's one of those things in the industry. You know, a couple, 2 or 3 security breaches, and people start thinking about you differently, I guess. Let's go back to the 608 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. This is Tony from Madison, Wisconsin.
Hey, Tony. What can we do for you?
Thank you so much for everything you do. Just wanted to say, thank you first off, and then, I started in IT about a year and a half ago, and currently I do mostly desktop support. Taking the A+ certification to solidify my basic knowledge and advance my career. I recently applied for a support role at a local software company that I was interested in, but after the first interview, I was told by the recruiter that they passed on because they were looking for someone with more of a background in software support rather than IT support. So if I'm interested in jobs that involve software support and further down the line, maybe get into DevOps types roles, is there a certification or a set of skills that you'd recommend focusing on next to help me along with this career path?
It's a tough one that the industry is in right now, because traditionally in our industry, you have had IT, information technology, which is responsible for operations, responsible for keeping the servers running, responsible for keeping the workstations running, responsible for keeping our data safe. And then you have had, for lack of a better word, computer science. And the computer science side is the programming side. It's the application development side. It's the side that does programming and does software. Those two entities traditionally have not been linked together. Maybe in the Venn diagram of technology, there's barely an overlap between those two sides, because computer science and developing applications is, as the name implies, a science unto itself. It's very, very difficult to become good at creating applications. It's also very difficult to become very good at managing a network, at building a network, at designing a server infrastructure, at maintaining these workstations and servers, and very difficult at keeping all of this data safe. The worst thing that I could imagine doing is somehow merging those things together in any way, because I think what you would end up getting is a programmer who doesn't program very well and someone in operations who doesn't keep things up and running very well. So now you've got the worst of both worlds combined together into a single DevOps form. But that hasn't stopped the industry from moving forward with DevOps. Now, the reality is DevOps has turned into something other than what they hoped it would be, which would be ultimately a much cheaper way to develop apps and a much cheaper way to keep the operations side going. What they've now realized is What we need is a developer who happens to know something about the network, who happens to know something about the servers, so that they can then tell the server team how to make this thing work properly, which in the past, interestingly enough, has not been the case. Developers have not had any knowledge of what happens on the network. They have no clue about the operating systems of the servers and what's going on because they spend all their time programming. You have to be a good programmer. So you're starting to see these new jobs show up with DevOps, and I think the DevOps jobs are this more developer than operations. So that's more of a computer science position. We're starting to see a little bit more of that happen, but the industry has not really embraced it as many outside the industry thought they would. It's an example of what I just gave, which was a lot of people who didn't know anything about the technology telling all of us how we should be doing it. And it really didn't work very well for any of us. If you would like to get into the development side of things, the DevOps side of things, or software support and software development, then you probably are going to have to shift gears. There's the side of us that manages IT with our servers, workstations, security, databases, and everything else, and our networks. We're on the IT side. We would make very bad software support people because we don't really know how software works. We don't understand how to do the debugs in the software. We don't understand what's happening we don't understand how the kernel is working underneath this, and we don't care. We got other stuff to do. So I really tell people you have to pick a side. Pick a side in the IT side, pick a side on the development side, and then you need to go that direction. You're not going to see a whole ton of overlap between those two, at least for most organizations.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Appreciate that.
Well, the best of luck. Figure out the thing I tell people, figure out the thing you like to do the most. Do you like to sit down and program and create an app and watch that app run and do it on a mobile device, or create an app on a web server? Then go into that programming side. Do more software development, do more computer science, embrace it and work in that world. There's plenty of opportunity on the computer science side. If you're someone who likes to do more of the IT side and work with operating systems and networks and security and databases and the packets going across the network, then you should be on the IT side. There's plenty of opportunity over there as well. You can't make a bad decision. You just need to pick a side and go with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I think that probably helped most people when you run into those situations and trying to figure out, what do I do with this? Where do I go with this? I can't wait to see what we in the industry do with DevOps. It seems to be changing in front of us all the time. Some places are really trying to embrace it. They're really trying to mesh those things together. And what they're finding, it doesn't quite work the way they thought it would, because it doesn't work that way. You can't just push those things together because you like them to be that way. There has to be some intelligence behind the decisions. And I would never want to do I'm a worse programmer you'll find. Do I have to do scripting? Yes. So what DevOps has been for a lot of people are the IT people doing more automation. Well, automation isn't development. I consider development to be that you're writing an app, that you are extremely familiar with the intricacies of writing a good app. I think what a lot of DevOps has run into is that there's a lot of scripting that needs to be done with cloud-based services and automation. We call it orchestration on the cloud side, which is automating the way that these things operate. There is absolutely opportunities out there to become very good on the cloud orchestration side and building and running those cloud services, no question about it. But let's not call them programmers, because they're not. We're just very, very good at making things efficiently automated. And by the way, we've been doing that since the very beginning. Everybody in IT is automating in some way. I used to automate back when I started in IT. Okay, that was only a couple years ago, granted. That was 20-something years ago. We were automating back then. We just didn't call it DevOps. We called it being in IT. I guess if we wrap a new name around it, maybe we can get more money for it. Oh, but DevOps, that's another 15% to my top line. I'm fine with that too. However we couch it, however it's pushed out there, if I'm able to use the existing skill set that I have to increase my overall revenue, to increase my salary, I'm fine with that. I think that would be good to have those pieces. And by the way, it's hard for those who have worked on the development side. I get this all the time. I want to be better with C++. I want to build apps for the web. I want to build apps for a mobile device. What certification should I get? And my answer is don't get one. There really aren't certifications for developers. Microsoft has a couple, but there's not certifications for a developer, because if you want to see how good someone is at being a developer, you look at their applications. That makes sense, doesn't it? They are certifying themselves at being able to do this. So it's a completely different world on the computer science side with how you represent your skills than it is on the IT side. On the IT side, we focus on our experience and our certifications, and in some ways, our formal education. So those things work that way too. We got some time for one more call. Let's go to 610 or 601. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hey, this is Sean, and I'm calling from Mississippi. Right now, I'm in an IT class, and we actually been watching your videos, learning networking.
Excellent.
And we actually appreciate you pretty well. So we just want to say thank you. I want to say, hey, everybody. Hi.
That's very nice. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate your calling, and congratulations on getting in there and learning this material, especially in the networking side. I would like everyone to make sure your Wireshark is installed by next week, and we're going to start looking at spanning tree protocol. We will talk to you then. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the call.
All right. Thank you, sir.
That's always nice to hear, too, when people are trying to get those things done. And by the way, what a great opportunity to network with other people. If you do find yourself in one of these classes, I know we do everything online here, and it's getting on YouTube, and you're kind of focused into this whole, and it's a dark room, and you're trying to pour through all these videos. What a great opportunity when you have a group of people that you can bounce things off of, that you can try different things, that somebody says, what if you do it like this? I always love those type of questions. What if we do it like that? Let's now go over and configure that and see what happens with it, to have all of those. And for those of you listening, if you don't have Wireshark installed, get Wireshark installed. If you don't have Packet Tracer installed, get Packet Tracer installed. If you're doing anything with networking, that's your 1-2 punch right there. That should get you up and running pretty quickly with understanding the details. Both of those probably a little bit outside the scope of Network Plus. But if you are looking to really continue with networking, having a knowledge of Wireshark, having a knowledge of what you can learn in Packet Tracer or just Cisco routers and switches themselves, that's a great thing for you to be able to do. So, Sean, thanks for calling to have that there. Well, for those of you asking in the chat room, did you miss the code word? Yep, it was in there in the first hour. So sorry. Yeah, we got bad weather coming through here, so this is a perfect time to finish up with the things that we're doing on our study group this time. I want to thank you for your calls. Thanks for being here in the first hour where I asked you the questions. Thanks for being here in this hour. For Wireshark, find it on wireshark.org. Packet Tracer is at Cisco, so look for Cisco Packet Tracer and you'll be able to find that one with no problem at all. I do have a Discord. It's not very busy, but if you go to professormesser.com/Discord, you'll be able to find that. So that will help with those last questions that have come in. We do one of these once a month. Feel free to check back in on the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, or click the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website. Thanks for being here. We could not do this without you. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.